And welcome back. We are continuing looking at Django and Python. This episode, we're going to look at connecting to a database. Now, the first thing we're going to do, and this is a MySQL database. Before, we've talked about SQLite, which is included. We've got a SQLite database built in as part of the Django installation. We're going to set up MariaDB. This is on EC2. We're going to talk about this is going to include a couple of things we're going to do to get the MySQL libraries and connection stuff put together just in general. We're going to work both in Python, and then we're going to move over to Django and set that up. So first off, this is stuff that you may be able to skip these first couple of steps if you have not done, if you're not on EC2, or if you already have your database installed there. So first thing we want to do is we're going to do a sudo yum install Python development GCC mariadb-server and then mariadb development. I think that's got everything. So we're going to load our database, and this, we're going to install our database, I guess, more specifically. And we're going to let this run for a second. And then we're going to be, so we've got it complete. So now, we're going to start our database. Take a second. So it did. So now, let's set it up to be a system level. Let's create our symlink. And now let's go ahead and secure it. We don't really need to do this step, but it is, we'll say, highly recommended. This is where we set up our database to be a moderately secure database. So the current password for root, and you should do this on any of your MySQL installs if you don't do it. Current password for root is none. So I'm going to set it. Now I'm going to do a simple password. I'm just going to do a password of Developreneur. In this case, because this is my test database, but I'm going to remove the anonymous users. I'm not going to allow remote login by root and get rid of the test database. Reload the privilege tables, boom. So now my root is Developreneur. And so if I go in and do mysql-u root-p, then I can see my, so I'm set up here. I am going to go ahead, I'm going to create a database real quick while I'm here because I'm going to need this, and I'm going to call it, let's call it dpproject. Okay, so I've done that. And because I'm lazy, I'm going to do before I actually work with the database, I'm going to set it up with, I'm going to go set it up over here. I'm sorry, I'm going to set it up, I'm going to set it up in Django first. But before I do that, I'm in the dpproject. So now what I do want to do is I've got to load a couple of libraries. So I'm going to do sudo pip3. This is for the Python stuff. And this is even if you've done this, if you have MySQL already installed on your database, we're going to make sure that we can connect to it. So I set it up via pip. And now I also have to do and got that. Okay, so I already had that. So now I'm going to go over to my Django, and I'm going to set up my database. Now before, oh, there it was down there. Before we had this SQLite thing. Very simple to set up. But we now have to make a couple changes in order to make sure that this thing connects to MySQL. And what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to change the default. We'll keep that for now. And that's going to be, we'll call that test. We'll just leave it there for now. And default is now going to be a MySQL engine. So it's going to be DB backends MySQL. And in this case, it's a little different what we're sending it. We're going to send it the name, which is the name of the database. We called it dpproject, and we called it that. And then we have to send it a user. Did I get that right? Didn't get that right. There we go. And for now, normally you don't want to do this, but for now we're just going to do root, and you have to send it a password, which in this case, as I said, is just Developreneur. And so now I've got a basic database set up. So if I come back over to here, and what I don't have, I have the database created, but I don't have the tables within it created. And if you remember, one of the things we had was we could do migrations, make migrations. As far as when we first started up, it told us about these things, which is where, and we'll get a little further into that, but we set up some basics about our database. So we can do migrate, and now it's going to try to do mysql-client. It said, oh, did you install it? So now we're going to go step back and make sure that we've got the right, we're going to make sure we include this mysql-db module. Okay, so I actually forgot to install the actual MySQL stuff. So now, if I go somewhere back through here, let's see, and I try to migrate. There we go. I had forgotten to pip3 install MySQL. But now, so I've got this database. If we look at it, we'll see what got created real quick. So if I use the dpproject, and show tables, I can see that it created multiple tables for me. It went in, and which is, you can see here when it says applying all of these pieces, we did this with SQLite. Now we've done it with MySQL. So now if I run Django, you remember, let's go get this way back here somewhere. There we go. So if I run this, now before I was able to log in. So if I go into admin again, and I do a login, it's not going to allow me. If I use my account that I used before, it's not going to log me to do that. I don't have any users. So if I go back, and so now, if you remember, one of the things we had to do, let's go back and look at that, is we had to create, let's do this. We had to create a super user. And so now I've got to do this in this new database. It's not going to take the data from SQLite. So I'm going to create a super user, and I'm just going to call him Rob. I'm going to give my, let's do this. Whoop. So we've got to go back and recreate this. Now it's going to be in the, be on the MySQL side. And so now if I go in and run it, now I can log in. And so now I can see where I've only got my one, let's see that, I've got my one user that I just created. And I'll go ahead and change it and give myself first and last name. And we'll go down here, all the way down here, and save. And I'm going to log out. So now I can come back here. And if we look at our table, we're going to use this for a second here. So I want to show you quickly what we've got. So let's do that. And so there's auth user. And if I select the records from there, I can see that here is my Rob Broadhead user. So I've entered that record in. So now let's go back over to tutorial. Let's change that hello world that we did. Now we had a couple of things we did before. We had all these little scripts and such that we did. So let's actually do a very basic database connection from Python. This is not using Django at this point. So I'm going to have to, up at the top, I'm going to do an import. I've got to import the MySQL stuff, that one. And let's do connection. So I'm going to be, let's see, config equals. This is going to be my configuration. And I need to give it basically what I had before. So I've got to give it a user, which is root. I have to give it a password, which is Develpreneur, if I can spell it right. I have to give it a database. I got to give it let's give it a host first, which is local, or 107.0.0.1. It's where it's hosted. And then I got to give it a database, which was called dpproject. And then I got to give it a table. Actually, wait, no, I don't have to give it a table. I just have to give it those. So let's just do that. We're going to add, just because this is just an extra little piece, which is raise on warning, which will allow us to get some feedback on this thing if we have an issue. Again, if you don't have it, it's not going to be crucial. Let's jump to the bottom. So we've got this thing config. Let's go ahead and connect. We do that. Whoop, mysql.connector. Connect. And we're going to send it the config. And let's just call db equals that. So now we're going to connect to the database. And now from that, let's see, and let's move this to the bottom. So this will be the last thing we see when we run this hello. So we're going to connect. Now what we do is we grab a cursor. So the cursor equals db.cursor. And we're going to do a try. And accept. Let's get that done first. We'll get our exception taken care of. Here as E. E. And now let's actually do our SQL. So our SQL is going to be equal to select star from, and what did we call that before? That was auth user. And then we need to actually execute it. And we will get more complicated with our SQL later, but right now this will do. So we're going to execute SQL. And then we've done a select, so we actually have to do let's do rows equals. We have to do a fetch to get it. If we just were doing an update, then we don't have any problems. But in this case, we need to actually get the results back. We're going to do a cursor.fetchall. And then let's do for row in rows. Row. And we missed something there. Oh, we need to import error. from mysql.connector. We're going to import that. So that runs. So now if we run hello, and yeah, we're just going to do that for now. So if we're going to go back over to the tutorial, we do Python 3 hello. And we forgot to actually install the connector here. So let's do pip3. So now we have our connector. And now it runs. And now we can see down here where our selection came from. And then we could take a look at that a little differently. We could, let's print row. Let's do select. Take a look at that. So that was, we would call it first name, last name, email. So we can come over here and we can do first name, comma, last name, comma, email. And let's print the whole row. And then we're going to do print. Let's see, email address is. And that's going to be row. Now it is not strings. So it's going to, I'm sorry, it's not, it's going to be a named parameter in this case. See here, tuple indices must be integers or slices, not strings. Oh, whoops. So we're going to use email. So that's going to be item 2. And then we're going to see that it comes out. We're not using named, even though we've got named fields. We're not actually using those. We're using the indexes into that. And so we have done a very simple connection. We could do the same thing. Let me take this out here. And we could do it over on the Django side. Let's create a view. Let's do show name. I didn't need those semicolons. I don't know why I keep adding those. Oop. Now we can come over here and I got to get this piece too. If I come to my view, I need that. Let's pull over our, let's see, pull over the MySQL stuff. There are going to be easier ways to do this, but as I've mentioned before, but let's do, where'd this go? Views. Let's do this. Let's do it here. Just in case, we're going to do name equals not found, in case we can't find it. Otherwise, name equals, well, let's, yeah, do this. Row 0 plus a space. Yeah, let's just do it this way. Last name, comma, first name. So we'll do that. First name. And then we're going to output the name. And if we go over here and run it, and go to, what did we call that? Oh, we probably didn't add that yet. This is going to be db, db test. And it was Oh, what did we call it? We called it show name. Okay. There we go. Yes, it exists. Oh, too many of those. Okay, so we've got that, got that. It's running here. What did we call that again? DB test. And we've got our database working. So we installed our database. We had quite a bit of, got a couple of libraries that we had to do related to that. And you'll see that we had several installs that we had to do. We had to install the MySQL client. We had to install the developer packages for Python and MySQL. We had to install, and those are just getting MySQL basically connecting to Python. We also, some key things, we had to install MySQL in the connector via pip3. Then we were able to, kill that, jump over to our hello. In so doing, we imported the error and we imported MySQL. When we do this, we have to connect to the database. We set up our configuration, user, password, host database, and then we connect. We grab a cursor, and then we can execute on that if we want to fetch all rows back, or we could just do a straight update if we wanted to. And then we got to make sure that we refer to stuff based on that zero-based index. That'll do it for today. And we'll come back tomorrow and learn a little bit more next time around. And we're going to learn a little bit more about, we'll probably go back over to the Django side and look at some of those templates and how to make something that's a little more useful as far as database is concerned. That being said, get out there, have yourself a great day. We will talk to you next